So it turns out that X299 is dead, I think. Like, it's dead.
Mine's dead.
You've got a 7980 XE that we delitted, and we squeezed as much performance as possible out of it. I think Intel is wasting everybody's time with X299. I mean, I love Intel, and I love AMD has woken them up. The slumbering giant is like, oh wait, we can squeeze more performance out of silicon? Oh, we didn't realize. So something's going to be really awesome before too long. Maybe next year, maybe the year after, maybe the one after that. But X299, new CPUs on X299 is wasting everybody's time. We're going to talk about why.
Yeah. Only Sith speak in absolutes.
Yeah, pretty much. Except for now. Well, I mean, mostly...
We've changed that policy.
Yeah, mostly it's true that there probably are some niche use cases for X299, but it's really frustrating because X299 should have probably, stopped with 7th generation. 8th generation should ease us into something else. You may be thinking, but wait, there's nothing past X299. That's not true. There's 3647.
There's always more, just not what we're given, in the store.
You get it in servers. And so we actually did see 3647, not this past Computex in June of 2019, but in June of 2018. Yeah, we're going into Q4 of 2019. Intel promised us almost a year ago the W3175X, which actually is in stock at Newegg at the time we're doing this, but you got to get a $1,600 motherboard, and the CPU costs $3,000.
And the motherboard is, like this big.
Yeah.
And has like 2 power supplies worth of hookups. Like, there's a lot of sacrifices you have to make to use that much power. Although, with how much I've put in on my 7980 XE, honestly, anything's looking great at the moment. I'm like the guy locked in the desert that's walking through looking at mirages and just trying to figure out, what the best processor is. I'm pretty sure you could just throw me like a quad core and I'm going to think it's better if it's cooler and isn't emanating heat into my brain.
You can have 10 gigahertz but only 4 cores, or 28 cores but only 1 gigahertz.
Oh, God.
This is basically the choices that we've been given. I mean, it's really true. And this video, we're going to talk a little bit about AMD and what AMD's doing, but really only in the context of like forcing Intel's hand. And X299 as a refresh, like, we don't even have any inside info. I don't know what's coming. I'm expecting like a clock bump, and we'll talk about hypotheticals and that kind of thing, but I just don't see how Intel could possibly pull a rabbit out of a hat with X299. It's too limited in terms of single thread performance, it's too limited in terms of clock speed, it's too limited in terms of PCIe lanes. The motherboard's already out there, there's not a chipset refresh, so what's happening?
And what we're gonna get is gonna be the 10980 XE. It's still gonna be soldered, it's gonna be like 3.9 gigahertz and the same core count and the same heat and maybe one little extra feature. But with none of the motherboards being really all that adaptable, we're at least past the point of getting all the, you only get this many PCIe lanes with this chip and this many with this chip. Like, we're past that point, but it's all going to fit. And in 7th gen, 7980 was an amazing processor. Like, I remember all of the hype around it. That's why I was so excited to have it in my system. But 3 years later, I'm begging someone to take it away from me.
So you really have to look at like the history of the 2011 socket, and the 2011 socket really got started with Sandy Bridge, but they tweaked it. They tweaked it around, I think, Broadwell, and so you have these Xeons like the E5, 2680, V3, and V4. Those are legendary CPUs, and I mention them specifically because basically tweaked versions of that is what we got for some of these high-end desktop processors. It's just Xeons rebadged as i7, unlocked, maybe with some other tweaks and features, and I don't want to minimize that. I mean, Intel's done a lot of work in that, not necessarily on the silicon, but qualification and testing and a lot of QA and QC that really, honestly, Intel's competition probably could learn from just a little bit in terms of, testing and integration and that kind of thing. But it's come to, the socket is overdue. So like, when that socket stops being relevant in a server space, Intel can still get some more money out of their tooling, and the AIB partners can get some money out of their tooling. They can repurpose some of those server boards as enthusiast boards, as desktop boards, and I get it. It makes sense.
And that was really appealing at first. Like, that was the cool part, is there was a plethora of reasons that you couldn't necessarily use some of the server boards or the server chips in a desktop environment directly without making some sacrifices and some little things. And Intel put in the work to make that usable and allowed some of us that were, goggling over the SR2 motherboards, the dual socket, like gaming motherboards that were basically vaporware and wishing we had those in our system. Like that was when I first got into tech YouTube. They kind of made that a reality, and that was really cool. But AMD has come in and done that better, and you can't just keep re-releasing. It's no longer impressive anymore. Like
the scrappy little underdog with a tenth of the resources has come in, and like something has clearly gone wrong here because.
And Threadripper chips are now basically just EPYC chips, and the EPYC chips are really, really good.
I like. Intel has some of the most intelligent people working for it, and they have basically a limitless supply of money. So those are not the problems. There's got to be as we talk about like fabrication and engineering and things like that. I just think that Intel sort of gave up. I mean, they looked at it and they were like, we're hitting the limits with the laws of physics. We can't violate the laws of physics. And it's like, okay, we'll just go in a different direction, find a workaround. And their competition has done that. And their competition in TSMC, more than AMD, I think, has done that because AMD's at the mercy of the foundries. It's an AMD TSMC partnership thing, but this is not really AMD versus Intel. It's really TSMC plus Global Foundries plus Samsung plus other people versus Intel. So it's like all of these companies working to try to come up with a better fabrication process than Intel, leading to a better product. But look at how well Intel does. I mean, if we look at the 9900K, the cache size is tiny. It is really, really tiny. The cache size on AMD is mammoth, and it takes a mammoth amount of cache to compete with Intel. If Intel's got engineering that's so good that they only need a fraction of the cache to compete with AMD, then imagine what will happen when Intel really sort of gets their engineers out and engineers get in engineering mode, which is I think what we're seeing with Jim Keller and some of the other people. That product is really exciting. That product is not X299. That's why I think X299 is dead. Intel could do something different. Obviously it takes fabrication capacity and some engineering in QA and QC to release another round of X299 processors. But you might be thinking, we don't have enthusiast server motherboards. We don't have enthusiast 3647 motherboards. It's too late. We need to put a lot of engineering time into those. And you're wrong. You're wrong, I say, because we already had the Dominus motherboard. Yeah, the Dominus motherboard and the Aorus Extreme motherboard from Gigabyte. We know those exist. We saw those at Computex. But also, we've got server motherboards. We've got, ASRock Rack has some really incredible server motherboards. They even got an ITX server motherboard. I saw that on Linus Tech Tips and on the internet and in servers and places like that. So it's a server motherboard that's 3647. You can take that as a starting point and start customizing it. It's not like you're reinventing the wheel. The new Mac Pros. The iMac Pro is X299, which is kind of funny because it's like an iMac Pro is kind of a toy.
Yeah.
But the new Mac Pros actually use 3647. It eschews all this nonsense, which is a waste of everybody's time at this point.
And especially with all of, there's been a lot of videos trying to beat Apple's Mac Pro or whatever. If we could get that motherboard and a consumer, that you could buy on its own, that would be an amazing platform. The Mac Pro is an amazing platform, Apple-ness aside, and we could get a lot of that. And that's what a lot of us have wanted out of the enthusiast stuff, and that was a lot of the energy that was turned up, on the enthusiast side was, can we take all of this, cut off some of the enterprise stuff that we're not using, and just go ham with the specs? And
one way they went ham with the specs was PCIe lanes, because the Mac Pro has 64 PCI Express lanes. It's not a PLX bridge or anything like that. Looks like Intel reused the Quick Path Interconnect, which is normally what you would use for a 2-socket system. They use some of those interconnects to just repurpose them as PCI Express lanes, which is fine. 64 PCI Express lanes at 3647 sounds like a great workstation chip to me.
That's honestly been a lot of, especially on the workstation side. Gaming side's obviously a little different. Most people don't care, but on the workstation enthusiast side, the lane limitation has been one of the biggest hurdles for them to overcome. And 44 sounds like enough, but you start running into issues with the NVMe layout. You have all of the NVMe routed through the single DMI that is choking when you're trying to use kinds of throughput that I'm trying to put my system through. It sounds great. I can get 4 NVMe drives on my X299 build, which is bonkers, but they all perform like one NVMe drive.
Or less when you're communicating between them because of the overhead.
And even less if you're using QLC drives, like I made the mistake of doing a couple with my drives.
Whoops.
Yeah, but it's getting choked. Whereas none of that issue happens on a certain other.
Yeah, if we look at what AMD is doing, they've got their server socket and their desktop socket. And when Ryzen first came out, I was kind of critical of the desktop socket. I was like, I would have liked to have seen triple channel memory. I would have liked to have seen maybe 4 more PCI Express lanes. We went from 16 to 20 plus 4 for the chipset, which then breaks out. And now on AM4, because of PCI Express 4.0, those PCI Express lanes go a lot farther. I was not expecting PCI Express 4 on Zen 2. I was maybe Zen 3, but that's not going to be AM4. And here we've got PCI Express 4 on AM4. That really changes the game. 32 cores, with the Threadripper 32 core, everybody was saying there wasn't enough memory bandwidth. So 16 cores with dual channel looked like it wasn't going to be enough memory bandwidth. That turns out it was Windows. I figured that out. I gotta always work that in.
But at the same time, those are the practical limitations that the users are still running into. Like, the users don't care if it's not performing well enough. Then
yeah. Well, and it turns out that DDR4 memory got faster, and we look at that now. It's like AMD's licensed a third-party integrated memory controller. Looks like for Zen 2 for Ryzen 3000. Ryzen 3000 is Zen 2. But with PCI Express 4 and the 4 extra PCIe lanes for NVMe, that's right size, I think, for the desktop. Triple channel might have been nice, but again, not right size for business customers and volume customers. Now we look at where they've gone with Threadripper, and even 4 channels. 4 channels for 32 cores, not really a bottleneck. 2 channels for 16 cores, 12 channels, or 12 cores, 2 channels, definitely not a bottleneck. Probably not going to be a bottleneck for 16 cores either. Although I'm going to predict that the 16 core CPU is not going to be that much of an uplift over the 12 core. I'd love to be wrong, but I think that because you don't get a larger cache, you don't get any of the other benefits. 12 cores with the giant cache that you get from 2 chiplets, it's great. And our 7402P with its giant cache, because each chiplet has 6 cores, that's going to be the sweet spot. So of course AMD is going to come out with a 24 core Threadripper with 24 cores to start. 32 cores, it's the higher bin chiplets, which are going to go into the 3950X and which are going into the 3800X, which are selling really well, and also the EPYC CPUs, which are selling really well. So there's not really any surprises there. The surprise here is really, Intel really just needs to let X299 go and focus on 3647. The fabrication that they're doing, their fab capacity is strained. Just cut X299 and do 3647. 9900K is enough for enthusiasts for now. 8 cores, it's really fast, it's low latency. Concede that AMD has gotten, sort of the mid-market here with a high core count, high multi-core performance. And then with 3647, you get 6 memory channels, which is really, it's a nice sweet spot. It's somewhere in between 4 and 8 channels, but it's a nice sweet spot. Maybe that's why we've heard rumors about AMD doing something with 8 channels on the desktop. Don't know. That's also unsubstantiated.
And we might not know until halfway through next year.
3647's got better PCIe lane handling. This is the X299 Aorus Gaming 9. Half of the circuitry on this thing is to deal with Kaby Lake, which only has 16 PCI Express lanes. Then the CPUs that had 28 PCI Express lanes, and then the CPUs that had 40 PCI Express lanes. So you eschew all of that garbage, and you make it so that AIB partners don't have to deal with your terrible business decisions. I'm sorry, Intel. You've really, you were trying to do market segmentation. It has come back to haunt you. The chickens have come home to roost.
Well, and they did the inverse, and they made it worse. Well, maybe not worse, but so they started with the Kaby Lake being integrated into X299, which
no one
didn't
wanted.
make sense. No one wanted, and then they flipped it around, and now it's mainly a market confusion thing. But they have the 9900K, which is labeled as i9 and HEDT, but it's not. No one understands why. If I say an i9 9900K, they're thinking it's this. No. It's not this. It doesn't have this. And honestly, this may sound stupid because it couldn't work for technological reasons, but I think some of the AMD boards can do it. I would love to see, it obviously isn't going to happen 10th gen, but if they wanted to do a weird hybrid enthusiast platform, let's get the kind of optimizations and performance that the 9900K has on a hybrid chipset that can do PCIe 4 and 3. That way you have a single 4X slot and then the rest that is 4X for NVMe kind of throughput. And then the rest of the slots are 3.0 because no one's using 4 or 6 4.0 PCIe slots. What are you plugging into it? And what I want from a X570 board is to have 7 full-fledged slots. I don't care that they're not all 4.0. I just want them all to be 16X. So get one that's 4.0, split the rest off because everyone's like, well, you have the lanes, you can just branch off into 3.0. Where am I going to put that? So let's get loaded up on lanes, loaded up on NVMe, give everyone 10 gig on board. Like, you could really balance out your I/O in a way that would make a lot of people happy.
It's funny you mention that because there's also another issue with that I ran into doing the X299 testing, and that is Intel's VROC, virtual RAID on chip. So you add, yeah. Well, I got one of the things, and I added it, and it turns out that VROC really wants you to use the onboard NVMe, but you're going to be bottlenecked. And if you use an add-in card, you're not going to be able to make those exposed to the CPU in all scenarios. So again, it was a very anti-consumer, a lot of landmines and traps, not well advertised, not well documented, and not available. And again, I think that's because of paranoia of eating into the server market. And it's like, would you rather eat into the server market, or would you rather it go to the competition? That's really the place that you find yourself in now. So you're gonna have to choose one of those things, and one of those is worse for you than the other one. So
yeah.
Again, 3647 direct CPU lanes, it would work. I actually did a breakdown, so it's like, okay, X299, what's the ideal PCIe layout? 44 lanes, that's all we got to work with. 8 lanes dedicated for NVMe, so those are CPU lanes.
Please.
And a third NVMe slot that's off the chipset. So if you get that third NVMe, it's going to be slower probably, but it's fine.
That would work for like your boot drive. Like, most people don't need a fast boot drive. That'd be fine. Then you have your, well, depending on your scenario, and then you have your actual like high bandwidth on the lanes.
You could actually do RAID 0 and it not be horribly slow, which is good for video editing.
Oh yeah.
16X for the GPU, another 8X for GPU or another peripheral, so you could run 2 GPUs. So like if you're doing like 2 GPUs is I think the sweet spot that we found for both Premiere and Resolve, because Resolve will actually support like 4 GPUs, but it's diminishing returns. But that second GPU really benefits.
And for game streaming purposes, you can only do this on HEDT in the first place. You need that quad channel memory. If you pop a second GPU on normal, like, what is the chipset? Z390, you literally just immediately lose performance in OES, even if you're not using the second GPU for anything. And so this is like, they have people who are wanting to do dual GPU workflows on the normal consumer chipsets because that's just the like gamery thing, but they could like actually optimize for this on HEDT and it actually be like super beneficial for everybody, creators, streamers, 3D work.
Works fine on Threadripper. 2 4X slots for peripherals because capture cards and crap like that.
Everything's 4X now.
Enough, yeah. And then you got 4X on board for onboard peripherals for things like onboard 10 gig or onboard peripherals that are on the motherboard that need more bandwidth. That's all your lanes. That's, forget 28 lanes.
Thunderbolt.
Forget anything else. I mean, it's just and we're out of lanes. We're literally out of lanes, and that's only 4 peripherals. Which for an enthusiast or content production type people, this is really like sort of the minimum. And you look at like the other thing is like innovation slowing down. Not really from the competition, but like how many people out there are still rocking the Sandy Bridge, like the i7 2700K, or they're buying like those first gen Sandy Bridge or even the second gen Ivy Bridge Xeons and repurposing those as a workstation. I did that. Some of our early videos were like, hey, look at this workstation that I built for practically nothing, and it's actually really good still even today. This is just the silicon does get tweaks, the silicon does get updated, new features are added to the silicon in the newer CPUs, but so Sandy Bridge was 2013. That's a long time ago. That feels like forever ago.
It feels like 2003.
It feels like 2003. So March 1983, the IBM PCXT was released. March 1987, widespread availability of the Intel i386 hit. And by 1990, they were in production quantity of the 486. So from 83 to 90, we went from the IBM PCXT to the 486. That was huge. I mean, an explosion. And from 2013 till now, some people are like, Sandy Bridge is still good enough. It'd be like people in 1990 saying, my IBM PCXT is still good enough. And it's like, is it though? Is it?
Yeah. Would you rather buy a new i3 or a Sandy Bridge i7?
A lot of the people that are watching mainstream channels like Jay's 2 Cents and Lies Tech Tips and things like that, these people are genuinely very excited about computer processors, which like it's exciting for me vicariously because it's like, yeah, this is the thing. I'm excited.
Technology.
Too. Yeah. But people are excited about that because they see that we might see the same kind of generational leap that they've seen in their lifetime, but they haven't seen recently. And that's what's happening because there's competition in the market. And so I think that's why Intel should just kill X299. You know what would be easier? Just cut the prices on the existing 9 series chips. It's like, hey, X299 is going to be here for another year or two while we're working on new CPUs. We're doing price cuts because it's been, a couple of years since we released the 7000 series CPUs and the 9000 series CPUs was just a refresh. Here, have a price cut. That's easier on integrators. Nobody has to spend any new silicon. It's not a marketing gag. Marketing is not running the show.
Consumers aren't ticked off for getting fed the same thing.
Yeah, and it's fine. And we might see some people refresh their X299 motherboards with a little better PCIe layout. This particular board has a great PCIe layout except for the M.2, which I'm sure was Intel specification because if you wanted to do VROC and you put it in the wrong M.2 slots, then you'd have a bad experience. So I get why they did it, but you're going to end up running your M.2 in an add-in card and then sort of, it's not a problem on Linux, but rigging that together. VROC actually does offer some benefits, so it's frustrating how that has been handled on the platform. And I don't think anybody that's worked on it would disagree with me. I think only marketing people would probably disagree with me. So Intel's got an opportunity to be like, you know what, X299 is basically end of life. Let's cut the prices. Let's focus on 3647. EVGA's ready, Asus is ready, Gigabyte's ready, ASRock's ready. Why not?
And there's one other market, which is out of the scope of this video, but I wanted to bring up just as like a little nugget to think about, where Intel is losing an even bigger consumer base because of their slow progress. That's the ARM. We are seeing those generational gaps or like jumps in performance in certain use cases, obviously not widespread desktop use, through ARM.
It is mind-blowing how fast video editing is on an iPad Pro.
It's insane. And we're gonna see within 5 years, I'm gonna be generous and say within 5, not within like 1, but we're gonna see all of the Apple hardware shift to that, just like they switched from the PowerPC to Intel to get that leap in the first place. Now they're saying goodbye to Intel, going back to ARM, and it's gonna be insane. Intel's gonna get slaughtered on that department, and then the PC people are gonna be like, why can't we do that? I'm already confused why my X299 system edits slower than an iPad.
There's a lot of ifs, ands, buts, and gotchas with editing
100%. Way much more nuance there, but there's a little bit that just really makes you start to think.
Yeah, so X299 is dead. Let it die. This generation, like if you're gonna buy a new,
long live X299.
Yeah, 3647. Just get one of the 3640 EVGA. Where can I buy the? We saw it 6 months ago plus. Where can I buy it? I need to buy it. You can buy the Dominus in the Gigabyte Aorus 3647 C621 on Newegg, but there's the only two, and they cost over $1,000. It's almost $2,000 for the board, which makes sense in low volume. But come on.
I don't know.
So again, Intel is, I love Intel. They're a sleeping giant and they're waking up now, which is great. And they've got a lot of smart people working for them and they are going to spend a lot of money. I'm sure shareholders are not going to be happy about that, but I'm happy that they're spending the money to get the job done because they're going to deliver some amazing, amazing products.
I just need to balance the silence and not releasing something new versus reiterating the same product over and over in the meantime, because they might actually be able to make faster progress if they stopped redeveloping the same chips.
I'd love to be wrong about X299, but I can't imagine an X299 CPU that's going to make me excited.
I'm keeping my motherboards. If I can slap something in there that impresses me, I'll do it, but 9th gen doesn't leave me much belief in that.
It's exciting. All right, we'll see you later. So I guess we should do like the YouTuber outro.
Smash the like button if you want to take down Intel. Comment down below if you love AMD. Subscribe to us if... I don't know.
Yes, so yeah, it's EposVox. There's a link. This is level 1. It's fine. I don't know.
Level 1 forums. Description below.
He has more experience YouTubering than I do. I'm just here. See ya.